we are one of the youngest OTA players in the market, but also the fastest growing one. Where will the next 50 million flyers in India come from? They will come from people who are sitting today in a third AC, second AC. We are a country which has still not hit a $4,000 GDP per capita mark. That's the number where the magic happened in Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome to Live Mint. We are in the market section. My name is Abhinav Trivedi. Now, Ixigo is the latest entry to the IPO market. And today's day 2 of the IPO. The listing, of course, will happen on June 18th. For the uninitiated, let me tell you, Ixigo is the leading OTA of India, started in 2007 by Alok Bajpai and Rajneesh Kumar. The company turned profitable in the year 2023. Now, last we checked, by 12 p.m. today, the IPO was subscribed by 4.77 times, with retail investors subscribing to it almost 12.5 times. As far as retail portion is concerned, there was a lot of interest by investors. I'm, of course, joined by Alok Bajpai, who is the group CEO and the co-founder of Ixigo. Alok, how are you? How is the day treating you?
It's been great, Abhinav. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, Alok. Now, as far as we understand, you plan to raise 740 crores, out of which 620 is offer for sale, and the other 120 is fresh share issue. And you raised almost 300 crore plus from anchor investors last week. Could you highlight some of those developments which took place in the last week?
Absolutely. So last few days, the developments on 6th, we had a pre-IPO secondary share sale to certain public market investors. So some of our existing investors sold about 176.2 crores of shares. New investors such as Steadview, Tata Mutual Fund, and White Oak, Bay Capital, they purchased these shares. And the subsequent day was the anchor day, where we had 333 crores of anchor investment that has come in, which the likes of SBI Mutual Fund, HDFC Mutual Fund, White Oak, Morgan Stanley, GIC, Government of Singapore, 3P, which is Prashant Jain's new fund, and several other marquee investors have actually participated in that. And the issue is already open since Monday.
Okay. Now, Alok, online booking is growing in India as we speak, and there are more players entering the market. I mean, the market already does have a lot of players like MMT, Yatra, Cleartrip, including yours as well. Now, going forward, how do you see Ixigo being different from the other players in the market?
Great question, Abhinav. We get this asked a lot. I think just going back to how we started, right? Ixigo has been a very unique company, as in it never started any of the categories by selling any tickets, right? So if you go back to 2007, when we launched as a meta search that was allowing customers to find where the best flight deals are. In 2013, when we launched our train app, 2013, 2014, when we entered the train category as a train utility app, where we were helping train passengers, find whether their PNR would confirm or not, finding accurate running status of trains using the location of other travelers, coach positions, platform numbers. All this was crowdsourced from our huge audience of train users. And over time, as we grew, transactions was something we got into later. So 2017 is when we partnered with IRCTC to launch train ticketing. So about 10 years after we started, we became an OTA on trains first. Then 2019, we became an OTA on flights. And post-COVID, we became an OTA on buses through the acquisition of AbhiBus. So in that sense, we are one of the youngest OTA players in the market, but also the fastest growing one. So if you look at our current scale, we are the second largest OTA by revenue. FY23 to FY20, we grew 350%, which was the fastest growing OTA in India across all major OTAs. And our user base is now phenomenally, expanded. If you look at total annual active users, right, we've basically crossed 429 million. And why we are different is because we chose to focus on tier 2-3 cities. So unlike other OTAs who built a flight first OTA, we built a train first OTA because desh ki janta, is still traveling on trains and buses as the center of about 8 billion trips a year. What happens on trains.
I'm glad you mentioned the number of users coming from tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Now, what is the division you see? I mean, do you see trains, buses, flights, or hotels? I mean, which section surging faster when we compare them to each other? And where do you see the maximum number of audiences coming from? Will it be tier two, tier three, and maybe rural going forward?
So 94% of our transactions today have a tier 2 3 leg in them, which means they are not a Delhi Bombay Delhi Bangalore kind of a ticket, right? And if you look at the split of our business, right, so train
Hmm.
accounts for just over half of our revenue, right? So that's the majority today. If you look at flight, it's the second biggest. 22% of our revenue gets contributed by flights, and bus is the third in the pecking order on revenue. 20% of our revenue comes from buses. But the moment you look at it at a margin contribution level, which is how much
Hmm.
of our contribution margin, which is net of all the direct costs, then it's a very well diversified business. 45% contribution margin coming from train, about 20 you have about 20% plus coming from flight, and the rest coming from buses, right? So in
Hmm.
that sense, about 55% of our contribution margin comes from flight and bus. So many people do not realize that despite the leadership on the train OTA side, it also gives us an edge in growing our flight business, because
Hmm.
a lot of people, when they can't find a train because everything gets waitlisted, will buy either a flight ticket or a bus ticket in order to get to that place. And also, as airports come in tier 2 3 towns, Abhinav, what's happening is Ayodhya mein airport aaya, Jharsuguda, Darbhanga. The moment you have an airport, we are able
Hmm.
to target a large user base and get people to come and buy flights with us.
Okay, now last year December was when you got into hotel bookings business. What is your aspiration here? I mean, and what is the percentage of revenue you're aiming for? And most importantly, what was the insight before getting into that space?
So, Abhinav, if you think about where our middle class audience in the country will spend on travel and how that will grow, right? We are a country which has still not hit a $4,000 GDP per capita mark. That's the number where the magic happened in Southeast Asia, in China, because your discretionary spend starts to grow beyond that number. It's likely that we'll hit that number in the next 4 years based on the current GDP growth as a country. And when that happens, discretionary income that starts flowing into categories like flights, hotels, as well as activities, packages, etc., suddenly explodes. 31% of our flight bookings are coming from people who initially came to us for a train or bus use case, and we
Hmm.
expect a similar transition to start occurring as we focus down the hotels category, right? Because it's a natural transition for people who are going from A to B. They will need a hotel in B or a place to stay in B, and we will help them on that. We just launched, so it's very early to comment on how it will play out. But I'm confident that our large user base has enough, people who are still booking hotels offline and would love to have an opportunity and a platform to trust where they can book online.
Sure. Now, coming to acquisitions, you did mention that some of the percentage of the funds which you will raise in the IPO will go in, funding inorganic growth. And a lot of people wanted us to ask you this question. You acquired Abibus in 2021. Now, what is
Yes.
the impetus or rationale when you look for acquisitions in the space? Most of them like fall in this inorganic category. What is the rationale behind it?
Yeah, great question. So, see, we've acquired two companies, Confirm Ticket and Abibus. Confirm Ticket was another train ticketing app, very focused on this category, a very frugal team. And Abibus, second largest bus OTA in India, which
Hmm.
was again built in a very frugal manner. They didn't have any major institutional investors. The team was very efficient and technology driven, right? As well as they had very deep penetration, especially in the southern markets. Extremely deep penetration, right, in terms of user base. So we actually saw that there was a lot of complementarity, and it also plays into our strategy to target the next billion users and create a OTA that's more relevant for every common man in India and not just for the people who fly. And therefore, was a great strategic fit for us. So we look for profitability or close to profitability in companies. We look for frugality. We look for a similar DNA as ours, because most acquisitions fail for cultural reasons, where there is less of a DNA or cultural fit. So we apply a very strong filter on that front, and of course the founders and the management team or the core team, has to be very aligned on our strategy and growth that we foresee in that category. So we will keep on the lookout on such acquisitions. At this point, we don't have any identified acquisitions in mind. Yes, a part of the GCP portion can be utilized for the acquisitions in the future. We keep talking to various teams which can add either complementarity or which can strengthen our existing vertical.
What are the biggest customer challenges, the pain points you wish to solve going forward? Because I very clearly remember that you mentioned that you're a train first OTA. So going forward, do you see that changing a bit, or do you see this proposition and position being maintained by Ixigo?
See, I think the reason why we looked at the world that way was very simple. That back in 2012, 2013, when mobile internet started to emerge, and we saw the profile of who is coming online, the average Bharatiya who was coming online was not somebody who traveled on a flight. So that whole Western model of building for flight and then selling more hotels to them, which is the classical OTA model, in our mind was not suited for the Indian market. And in India, if you are able to target someone who has still not stepped inside an airport and do it at a low enough customer acquisition cost, because again these are high volume customers, but obviously train on an absolute basis has a lower margin than other categories. But once you have significant volumes, the advantage is that again many of these will graduate into buying buses, flights, hotels and other categories, because वो ट्रैवलर वही है, ट्रेन उसके लिए पहला जरिया है, राइट? इट्स द फर्स्ट मोड on which they actually start their travel journey. But the same traveler actually goes and spends, and the same person might do an international trip more infrequently, maybe once in 3 years, but they might also go and spend time in Dubai, Singapore, right? Again, we're seeing that kind of behavior in our app. So look at the market 10 years out, I mean, and think about where will the next 50 million flyers in India come from, right? They will come from people who are sitting. I mean, a large part of them will come from people who are sitting today in a third AC, second AC train compartment. Where will the next 50 million bus bookers come from? Many of them will come from either people who are booking buses offline today or who are sitting in a train. And as road transportation infra improves, the time taken by a bus in many routes is either the same or better than what a train takes.
Okay, Alok, thank you so much for your time. The IPO has been going well. I will catch you on the listing day, probably after that, when I will push you more for numbers and future outlooks. Thank you so much for joining us, Alok. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye bye.